In the shadowed halls of Blackthorn Manor, a priceless Ming vase vanishes from a locked china cabinet, sparking a mystery that only Hercule Poirot can unravel. As secrets unravel and motives collide, greed, desperation, and hidden treasures, appraisals uncover a ruby guarded by a dragon's riddle, revealing a cunning deception orchestrated by one among a cast of suspects, a deaf nephew, a nervous heiress, a scholarly archaeologist, and a gossiping matron. In a whirlwind of clues, from a toppled figurine to a whiff of lavender, Poirot exposes the truth, restoring order to a house steeped in secrets. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Blackthorn Manor. The late autumn mist clung to the English countryside like a mourner's veil, softening the edges of the rolling hills and draping the ancient oaks in a shroud of grey. Hercule Poirot, seated in the cushioned comfort of a first-class railway carriage, gazed out at the blurred landscape with an air of contemplative detachment. His small, precise hands, clad in immaculate white gloves, rested lightly on the letter. He held a letter that had arrived at his London flat 2 days prior, penned in the elegant, slightly tremulous script of Lady Evelyn Blackthorn. The invitation it contained was both courteous and cryptic, requesting his presence at Blackthorn Manor for a weekend gathering to discuss a matter of utmost delicacy. Poirot's moustache, meticulously waxed and symmetrical, twitched faintly as his grey cells stirred with curiosity. Why, he wondered, would a woman of Lady Evelyn's stature summon a detective of his renown to her remote estate? The answer, he suspected, lay not in the words of the letter, but in what remained unsaid. The train's rhythmic clatter provided a soothing counterpoint to Poirot's thoughts. He adjusted his perfectly knotted tie, a habit born of his unyielding devotion to order and symmetry, and reread the letter. Lady Evelyn, widow of the late Sir Reginald Blackthorn, had mentioned nothing specific, no crime, no scandal, only a vague allusion to a need for his unique discretion. Sir Reginald Poirot, recalled, had been a man of considerable wealth and eccentricity. His fortune built on shrewd investments in the East India trade and later squandered on an obsessive pursuit of rare artifacts. Rumours had long circulated of a hidden treasure within Blackthorn Manor, treasure tied to Sir Reginald's vast collection of antiquities. Though no one knew its precise nature, was this, Poirot mused, the reason for his summons? A theft, perhaps, or something more sinister, lurking beneath the polished veneer of aristocratic life. He folded the letter with care and slipped it into the inner pocket of his tailored overcoat. The carriage was warm, the air faintly scented with the polish of mahogany and the faint tang of coal smoke from the engine. Opposite him, a young man in a tweed suit dozed, his newspaper sliding precariously toward the floor. Poirot's sharp eyes noted the headline, "Antiquities Market in Turmoil as Rare Ming Vase Fetches Record Sum." A coincidence, perhaps, but Poirot did not believe in coincidences. He leaned back, his small frame sinking into the plush seat, and allowed his mind to wander through the possibilities. A missing artifact, a family dispute over Sir Reginald's legacy, or perhaps a secret that Lady Evelyn feared might unravel. Her carefully curated world. The train slowed as it approached the small station of Thornwick, a quaint stop nestled in a valley where the manor stood. Poirot gathered his leather valise, adjusted his Homburg hat, and stepped onto the platform. The air was damp and cool, carrying the earthy scent of fallen leaves. A liveried driver awaited him, a stoic figure in a dark overcoat, holding a sign bearing Poirot's name in precise lettering. "Monsieur Poirot?" the man inquired, his voice clipped and professional. Poirot inclined his head, his eyes scanning the driver's weathered face for any hint of unease. There was none, only the practiced neutrality of a servant, accustomed to discretion. The drive to Blackthorn Manor was a silent one, the Rolls-Royce gliding along narrow lanes flanked by hedgerows and stone walls. Poirot observed the landscape. With interest, the fields, stripped bare by harvest, stretched toward the horizon, where the manor's silhouette emerged against the fading light. Its towers, clad in ivy, rose like sentinels over the surrounding woods, their Gothic arches and weathered stone speaking of centuries past. Yet there was a melancholy to the place, a sense of decay that no amount of grandeur could mask. The windows glowed faintly, suggesting life within, but the grounds were eerily still, save for the rustle of leaves stirred by the wind. As the car drew up to the manor's entrance, a heavy oak door swung open, and Lady Evelyn Blackthorn herself appeared, descending the steps with the measured grace of a woman accustomed to command. She was in her 60s, tall and angular, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. Her dark green dress, though simple, was of exquisite cut, and her eyes sharp and assessing met Poirot's with a mixture of warmth and wariness. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, extending a gloved hand, "I am deeply grateful you could come. Blackthorn Manor is honored to receive you." "The honor, madame, is mine," Poirot replied, bowing slightly. His voice, with its precise French inflection, carried a warmth that belied the keen scrutiny of his gaze. Lady Evelyn's smile was polite but strained, and Poirot noted the faint lines of tension around her mouth. She led him into the grand hall, where a chandelier cast flickering light over marble floors and portraits of stern-faced ancestors. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and wax polish, and Poirot's senses sharpened as he took in his surroundings. Every detail, the faded grandeur of the tapestries, the gleam of a silver candelabra, the distant echo of footsteps held potential significance. "You must be weary from your journey," Lady Evelyn said, guiding him toward a drawing room where a fire crackled in a massive stone hearth. "Please, make yourself comfortable. The other guests will join us shortly for dinner." She gestured to a velvet-holstered chair, and Poirot settled into it, his posture impeccable. "May I inquire, madame," he said, his tone gentle but probing, "as to the nature of this matter requiring my presence? Your letter was, how violent, most discreet." Lady Evelyn's smile faltered, and she clasped her hands tightly. "All in good time, Monsieur Poirot," she replied. "I wish first to introduce you to my guests. They are an eclectic group, and I believe their presence will shed light on the situation." Her hesitation was brief but telling, and Poirot's moustache quivered with interest. He nodded, content to wait, knowing that the truth often revealed itself in the silences between words. The drawing room was a testament to Sir Reginald's passion for antiquities. Glass-fronted cabinets lined the walls, displaying an array of treasures, jade figurines, intricately carved ivory, and delicate porcelain that caught the firelight. At the room's center stood a towering oak china cabinet, its shelves laden with exquisite pieces, including a prominent space where Poirot noted a single item seemed conspicuously absent. His eyes lingered on the empty shelf, but he said nothing. Filing the observation away for later, the other guests began to arrive, their entrances marked by the soft creak of the door and the murmur of introductions. First was Charles Blackthorn, Lady Evelyn's nephew, a man in his early 30s with the easy charm of a seasoned rake. His tailored suit was slightly rumpled, and his smile, though dazzling, did not reach his eyes. Monsieur Poirot, he said, shaking hands with a touch too much enthusiasm. I've heard of your reputation. Quite the sleuth, aren't you? Poirot inclined his head, noting the faint scent of brandy on Charles's breath and the nervous energy in his movements. A gambler, perhaps, or a man with debts to pay. Next came Miss Clara Worthing, a young heiress whose delicate features were marred by a perpetual air of anxiety. Her blonde hair was pinned neatly, but her hands twisted the hem of her shawl as she curtsied to Poirot. "A pleasure, monsieur," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Her eyes darted to the china cabinet, then away, as if afraid of what it might reveal. Poirot's interest, deep in fear, he knew, was often a precursor to guilt. Dr. Lionel Hayes, a lean, bespectacled archaeologist, entered with a quiet dignity that contrasted with Charles's flamboyance. His handshake was firm, his gaze steady, but Poirot detected a flicker of unease when Lady Evelyn mentioned Sir Reginald's collection. "I had the privilege of cataloguing some of Sir Reginald's artifacts," Hayes said, his voice measured. "A remarkable collection, though not without its mysteries." Poirot smiled politely, his mind noting the archaeologist's choice of words. Finally, Mrs. Beatrice Langley swept into the room, her voluminous dress rustling like autumn leaves. A society matron with a penchant for gossip, she greeted Poirot with effusive warmth, her lavender perfume enveloping him like a cloud. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, what a thrill to meet you," she exclaimed, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "I do hope you'll unravel whatever little drama Lady Evelyn has in store for us." Poirot bowed, his expression inscrutable, but he noted the way Mrs. Langley's gaze lingered on the other guests, as if cataloguing their every gesture for later dissection. Dinner was announced, and the party moved to the dining room, a cavernous space dominated by a long mahogany table and a chandelier that glittered like a constellation. The meal was lavish roast pheasant, glazed vegetables, and a fine claret, but the atmosphere was strained. Lady Evelyn presided with impeccable poise, steering the conversation toward neutral topics: the weather, the state of the countryside, the latest London fashions. Yet Poirot's keen eyes missed nothing. Charles drank too quickly, his laughter a touch too loud. Clara picked at her food, her eyes fixed on her plate. Dr. Hayes spoke sparingly, his attention drifting to the walls, where more of Sir Reginald's artifacts were displayed. Mrs. Langley, meanwhile, filled the silences with tales of society scandals, her voice a relentless hum that grated on Poirot's nerves. As the dessert coarser, delicate lemon soufflé was served, Lady Evelyn cleared her throat, her hands folded tightly before her. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but laced with urgency, "I owe you an explanation for my invitation. A matter of grave concern has arisen, one that threatens the peace of this house." The table fell silent, all eyes on her. Poirot leaned forward, his expression attentive but impassive. "A week ago," Lady Evelyn continued, "I discovered that a priceless item from my late husband's collection, a Ming Dynasty vase of exceptional rarity, has vanished from the china cabinet in the drawing room. The cabinet was locked, the key in my possession, and yet the vase is gone. I cannot fathom how or why this has occurred, but I fear—" She paused, her eyes sweeping the table. "I fear someone among us may know more than they admit." A gasp escaped Mrs. Langley, though Poirot suspected it was more theatrical than genuine. Charles's glass paused midway to his lips, his face paling. Clara's hands trembled, and Dr. Hayes adjusted his spectacles, his expression unreadable. Poirot's moustache twitched, his mind alight with possibilities. A theft then, but one executed with remarkable cunning. The locked cabinet, the single key, the absence of any sign of forced entry, it was a puzzle worthy of his talents. Madame Poirot said, his voice calm and measured, "You have done well to call upon Hercule Poirot. Rest assured, I shall uncover the truth. But I must ask, when was the vase last seen, and who had access to the drawing room?" Lady Evelyn hesitated, her fingers tightening around her napkin. "The vase was in its place 2 weeks ago, when I last inspected the cabinet. The drawing room is accessible to all in the household, my guests, my staff, but the key remains with me at all times. I cannot imagine how anyone could have opened it without my knowledge." Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the faces around the table. Each guest, he knew, held a piece of the puzzle, whether they realized it or not. Charles's debts, Clara's fear, Hayes's expertise, Langley's gospel were threads in a tapestry yet to be woven. "Very well," he said, rising from his chair. "With your permission, madame, I shall begin my inquiries tomorrow. For now, I suggest we retire and allow the mind to rest. The grey cells, they work best when refreshed." The guests murmured their good nights, their faces a gallery of unease. Poirot lingered in the dining room, his gaze returning to the portrait of Sir Reginald that hung above the fireplace. The man's stern features, captured in oils, seemed to watch him with silent intensity. "Monsieur Blackthorne," Poirot murmured, "what secrets did you leave behind? And who among these souls seeks to claim them?" As he made his way to his guest room, the manor's corridors seemed to whisper with echoes of the past. The air was heavy, the shadows deep, and Poirot's mind was alive with the challenge before him. The Ming vase was but the beginning. He sensed a clue to a deeper mystery, one that would test the limits of his intellect. He retired to his room, his valise neatly unpacked, and sat at the small writing desk, his notebook open before him. With a fountain pen, he began to jot down his observations: the empty shelf, the locked cabinet, the guests' reactions. Each detail was a brushstroke in the portrait of a crime, and Poirot, with his unerring precision, would paint it to completion. The night was still, save for the distant creak of the manor settling into its ancient bones. Poirot extinguished his lamp and lay in the darkness, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The invitation to Blackthorne Manor had been no mere courtesy, was a summons to unravel a web of deceit, woven by hands yet unknown, as sleep claimed. His final thought was of the china cabinet, its empty shelf, a silent challenge to the greatest detective of his age. Chapter 2. The guests assembled. The morning sun struggled through the heavy clouds that hung over Blackthorne Manor, casting a pallid light across its weathered stone facade. Hercule Poirot stood at the window of his guest room, his small, meticulous frame silhouetted against the grey dawn. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, traced the outlines of the manor's ivy-clad towers, noting the way the mist seemed to cling to the estate like a secret reluctant to be revealed. The events of the previous evening, the cryptic invitation, Lady Evelyn's revelation of the missing Ming vase, the uneasy glances of her guests had set his grey cells alight with possibilities. Breakfast awaited, and with it, the opportunity to observe the assembled company in the sober light of day. Poirot adjusted his tie, ensuring its knot was flawless, and descended the grand staircase, his polished shoes tapping softly on the marble. The dining room, less imposing in the morning, light than it had been at dinner, was already alive with the clink of porcelain and the murmur of voices. A long sideboard groaned under the weight of silver trays laden with kedgeree, poached eggs, and crisp bacon, their aromas mingling with the faint mustiness of the manor's ancient walls. Lady Evelyn presided at the head of the table, her posture as regal as ever, though Poirot noted the faint shadows beneath her eyes, betraying a sleepless night. She greeted him with a nod, her lips curving into a smile that did not reach her gaze. "Monsieur Poirot, I trust you slept well?" she inquired, her voice smooth but tinged with strain. "Perfectly," Madame Poirot replied, bowing slightly before taking his seat. "The air of the countryside, it is most invigorating for the mind." His tone was courteous, but his eyes were already at work, scanning the room for the other guests, who were trickling in with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Charles Blackthorne was the first to arrive, his boyish charm undimmed despite the early hour. His suit, though well cut, bore the faintest creases, suggesting a late night or a hurried morning. He flashed Poirot a grin, his eyes bright but guarded. "Good morning, Monsieur Poirot," he said, helping himself to a generous portion of bacon. "Ready to unravel our little mystery, I presume?" His tone was light, almost mocking, but Poirot detected a nervous edge, a flicker of unease that belied his nonchalance. Charles's debts, Poirot recalled, were rumoured to be motive, perhaps, for meddling with his aunt's treasures. Miss Clara Worthing entered next, her steps hesitant, as if she feared the very floor might betray her. Her pale blue dress was modest, her blonde hair pinned tightly, but her hands betrayed her agitation, twisting a laced handkerchief into knots. She murmured a greeting to Poirot, her voice barely above a whisper, and took a seat as far from Charles. As the table allowed, Poirot noted her pallor, the way her eyes darted toward the door, as if expecting an unwelcome arrival. Her fear, he mused, was not merely of the theft, but of something or someone specific. Dr. Lionel Hayes followed, his lean frame moving with the deliberate precision of a man accustomed to careful observation. His spectacles glinted in the morning light, and his grey tweed suit was as understated as his demeanour. He nodded to Poirot, his expression neutral, and busied himself with a cup of black coffee, declining the lavish spread. "I find simplicity aids concentration," he remarked to no one in particular, though Poirot suspected the comment was meant for him. Hayes's expertise in antiquities, Poirot knew, made him a figure of interest, particularly given his past association with Sir Reginald's collection. Mrs. Beatrice Langley swept into the room last, her presence as commanding as a gust of wind through an open window. Her dress, a vivid shade of plum, rustled with every step, and her lavender perfume preceded her like a herald. "Monsieur Poirot," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, "I do hope you've already solved our little puzzle. A missing vase. How positively thrilling." Her enthusiasm was infectious, but Poirot's smile was measured. Mrs. Langley's penchant for gossip, he suspected, made her both a potential ally and a liability, her tongue as likely to obscure the truth as to reveal it. As the guests settled, Poirot sipped his café au lait, his eyes moving from one face to another, cataloguing their expressions, their gestures, their silences. The dining room, with its high ceilings and heavy drapes, felt like a stage, each guest an actor playing a role yet to be fully understood. Lady Evelyn, sensing the tension, attempted to steer the conversation toward trivialities, the beauty of the manor's gardens, the prospects for the hunting season, but her efforts faltered. The spectre of the missing vase loomed over the table, an unspoken accusation that hung in the air like the mist outside. It was Charles who broke the silence, his tone deliberately casual. "Aunt Evelyn, have you considered the staff? A maid or footman might have sticky fingers. These old houses are full of secret servants who know them." His words were met with a sharp glance from Lady Evelyn, who shook her head. "My staff are loyal, Charles," she said firmly. "Most have been with the family for years. I trust them implicitly." Her tone left no room for argument, but Poirot noted the way Charles's lips twitched, as if suppressing a retort. Clara, meanwhile, flinched at the mention of secrets, her handkerchief now a crumpled ball in her lap. Dr. Hayes cleared his throat, his voice measured. "If I may, Lady Evelyn, the vase's value lies not only in its rarity, but in its provenance. Sir Reginald often spoke of its history, gifted by a Chinese diplomat in the 18th century, was it not? Such an item would fetch a fortune on the black market." His words were clinical, but Poirot detected a flicker of intensity in his gaze, as if the vase held more than monetary significance. Mrs. Langley seized the opportunity, leaning forward with a conspiratorial air. "Oh, Dr. Hayes, you make it sound so deliciously sinister. Do you think there's a thief among us, skulking about like a character in a novel? Why, I heard tell of a scandal involving a stolen artifact at Lord Whitby's estate last year sold to some shady dealer in London, they say." Her eyes gleamed, but Poirot's expression remained impassive, though he filed away her mention of London dealers for later consideration. Lady Evelyn's composure wavered, her hand tightening round her teacup. "Enough speculation," she said sharply. "Monsieur Poirot is here to uncover the truth, not to entertain idle gossip." Her gaze met Poirot's, a silent plea for reassurance. He inclined his head, his moustache quivering slightly as he formulated his next move. "Madame Poirot said," his voice calm but commanding attention, "I propose to examine the scene of the crime, the drawing room and its china cabinet. With your permission, I shall begin after breakfast. It is in the details, you see, that the truth reveals itself." His words were met with nods, though the guests' expressions ranged from curiosity to unease. Clara's eyes widened, Charles's smile tightened, Hayes adjusted his spectacles, and Mrs. Langley clapped her hands in delight. The meal concluded with little further conversation, the guests dispersing to their respective pursuits, Charles to the billiard room, Clara to the library, Hayes to his notebooks, and Mrs. Langley to her correspondence, no doubt brimming with embellished accounts of the morning's events. Poirot, however, lingered, his gaze drawn to the portrait of Sir Reginald that hung above the dining-room fireplace. The man's stern visage, with its piercing eyes and tightly set mouth, seemed to challenge him, as if guarding the manor's secrets even in death. Lady Evelyn approached, her steps soft on the polished floor. "Monsieur Poirot," she said quietly, "I must confess I am uneasy. The vase's disappearance is troubling, but I fear it is only the beginning. My husband was a man of many secrets, and this house, it holds them still." Her voice trembled, and Poirot's keen eyes noted the genuine fear in her expression. "Fear not, madame," he replied, his tone soothing yet firm. "Hercule Poirot does not rest until order is restored. The vase, it is but a thread in a larger tapestry. I shall follow it to its source." His words seemed to steady her, and she nodded, retreating to her duties as hostess. As Poirot made his way to the drawing-room, the manor's corridors seemed to pulse with a quiet menace, their shadows shifting with the flicker of gas lamps. The china cabinet awaited, its locked doors a silent challenge to his intellect. The guests, he knew, were pieces in a puzzle, their motives and secrets interlocking in ways yet to be revealed. With his notebook in hand and his grey cells at the ready, Poirot stepped into the drawing room, prepared to unravel the mystery that Blackthorn Manor held so tightly within its walls. Chapter 3. The locked cabinet. The drawing room of Blackthorn Manor exuded a sombre elegance. Its high ceilings and faded tapestries steeped in the weight of centuries. Hercule Poirot stood at its centre, his small, immaculate figure a stark contrast to the room's grandeur. The morning light filtered through tall, mullioned windows, casting a lattice of shadows across the polished oak floor. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, were fixed on the china cabinet, towering piece of craftsmanship that dominated the far wall. Its glass panels gleamed, reflecting the flicker of a nearby candelabrum, and its shelves bore an array of Sir Reginald Blackthorn's treasures, delicate porcelain figurines, intricately carved jade, and lacquered boxes that whispered of distant lands. Yet it was the empty space on the central shelf, where the missing Ming Dynasty vase had once stood, that commanded Poirot's attention. The cabinet was locked, Lady Evelyn had assured him, and the single key remained in her possession. A puzzle, then, and one that intrigued the great detective's methodical mind. Poirot approached the cabinet with the precision of a surgeon, his gloved hands clasped behind his back to avoid any unwitting disturbance. The lock, a sturdy brass mechanism, showed no signs of tampering, no scratches, no dents, no telltale marks of a thief's tools. He leaned closer, his mustache twitching as he examined the glass panels. They were intact, their edges sealed tightly within the oak frame, and the cabinet's base was flush against the wall, offering no hint of a hidden catch or panel. "Most curious," Poirot murmured, his voice a soft cadence in the silent room. "A vase does not vanish from a locked cabinet without purpose or ingenuity." He stepped back, his gaze sweeping the room for context. The drawing room was a shrine to Sir Reginald's obsession with antiquities, its walls adorned with faded tapestries depicting mythical beasts and far-off empires. A heavy marble fireplace stood dormant, its mantel cluttered with small artifacts. A bronze statuette, a crystal decanter, a silver cigarette case etched with initials Poirot could not yet decipher. The windows bolted shut, admitted no draught, and the thick velvet curtains hung undisturbed. The only entrance was the double door through which he had entered, its hinges oiled and silent. Poirot's grey cells hummed, piecing together the scene. The theft, he deduced, was not a crime of brute force, but of calculation, a mind at work, not a hand. Lady Evelyn entered, her footsteps muffled by the thick Persian rug. Her dark dress rustled faintly, and her face, though composed, betrayed a flicker of anxiety in the tightness of her lips. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low, "have you found anything of note?" "The cabinet, it is as I described, is it not?" "Indeed," Madame Poirot replied, turning to face her with a courteous bow. "The cabinet is a fortress, its lock unviolated, yet the vase is gone. This suggests a method most clever, or perhaps a deception we have yet to uncover." His eyes met hers, searching for any hint of withheld truth. But Lady Evelyn's gaze was steady, though her hands clasped tightly before her. "I cannot fathom it," she said, moving to stand beside the cabinet. "The key never leaves my person. I keep it on a chain, here." She drew a slender silver chain from beneath her collar, revealing a small, ornate key dangling at its end. "Each evening I check the cabinet myself. 2 weeks ago, the vase was in its place. I am certain of it." Poirot nodded, his fingers brushing his moustache as he considered her words. "And the room, madame? Who has access to it? Your guests, your staff, anyone might enter. Nan." Lady Evelyn hesitated, her brow furrowing. "The drawing room is open to my guests during the day, and the staff come to clean or tend the fire. But the cabinet itself, no one touches it. The servants know its value, and my guests—" She trailed off, her eyes flickering toward the door. "I trust them, Monsieur Poirot, but I cannot deny the evidence of my eyes." "Trust, madame, is a luxury we cannot afford until the truth is revealed," Poirot said gently. "May I see the key?" She unfastened the chain and handed it to him, her fingers trembling slightly. The key was small but heavy, its design intricate, with a filigree pattern that matched the cabinet's lock. Poirot tested it, sliding it into the lock with a soft click. The mechanism turned smoothly, and the cabinet door swung open, revealing its treasures in their orderly rows. He closed it again, returning the key to Lady Evelyn with a nod. "A lock most secure," he said, "and yet the vase is gone. Tell me, madame, was the cabinet ever left unlocked, even for a moment?" "Never," she said firmly. "I am meticulous in such matters. My husband's collection was his pride, and now it is my duty to protect it." Poirot inclined his head, his mind racing. A locked cabinet, a single key, a room accessible to many yet no sign of intrusion. The puzzle was exquisite, its pieces scattered among the manor's inhabitants. He turned his attention to the guests, who had gathered in the morning room after breakfast, their voices drifting through the open door. It was time, he decided, to observe them more closely, to probe the edges of their secrets. He found them seated around a low table, the air thick with the scent of coffee and Mrs. Langley's lavender perfume. Charles Blackthorne lounged in an armchair, his legs crossed, a cigarette dangling from his fingers. His smile was easy, but Poirot noted the way his eyes flicked toward the drawing-room door, as if expecting an accusation to emerge. Clara Worthing sat near the window, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her gaze fixed on the rain-dappled glass. Dr. Lionel Hayes stood by a bookcase, leafing through a volume on ancient ceramics, his spectacles glinting as he glanced up at Poirot's entrance. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, ensconced on a settee, was regaling the group with the tale of a stolen necklace at a neighboring estate, her voice a relentless cascade of innuendo. "Monsieur Poirot," Mrs. Langley exclaimed, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Have you solved our mystery already? The cabinet is quite the enigma, isn't it? Locked tighter than a miser's purse, and yet poof, the vase vanishes." Her laughter was shrill, and Poirot's smile was polite but restrained. "The cabinet, madame, is indeed a puzzle," he said, his voice calm. "But it is in the nature of puzzles to yield to the patient mind. I would ask, if I may, for your observations. Did any of you notice anything unusual in the drawing room? A stranger, a sound, a detail out of place?" Clara's head snapped up, her eyes wide. I don't spend much time in there," she stammered, her cheeks flushing. "It's so full of things. It makes me nervous." Her words were halting, and Poirot noted the way her fingers tightened around her shawl, as if anchoring herself against a rising tide of fear. Charles exhaled a plume of smoke, his smile wry. "Nervous, Clara. It's just a room full of old trinkets. Though I'll admit that cabinet's a beast. You'd need a sledgehammer to crack it open, and even then you'd wake the whole house." His tone was light, but Poirot detected a calculated deflection, a desire to steer the conversation away from himself. Dr. Hayes closed his book with a soft thud, his expression thoughtful. "The cabinet is a fine piece, Monsieur Poirot. Early 18th century, I believe, designed to protect its contents. Sir Reginald was particular about its security. I recall him boasting of its lacquer German design, quite advanced for its time." His voice was steady, but Poirot's keen eyes caught the slight tremor in his hand as he adjusted his spectacles. "Most interesting, Monsieur Hayes," Poirot said, his tone encouraging. "Your knowledge of Sir Reginald's collection, it is extensive, Nan. Perhaps you noticed the vase itself, Ming, was it not? Before its disappearance." Hayes hesitated, his gaze flickering toward Lady Evelyn, who had joined them silently. "I saw it some weeks ago, when I last visited," he said. "It was exquisite, a rare example of 15th century craftsmanship, but I had no reason to inspect it closely." His words were careful, too careful, and Poirot's moustache quivered. With interest, Mrs. Langley leaned forward, her fan fluttering. "Oh, but Dr. Hayes, you're so modest. You know every dusty relic in this house, don't you? I wager you could tell us exactly what that vase was worth. Who might want it?" Her tone was teasing, but Poirot noted the way Hayes's jaw tightened, a flash of irritation crossing his face. Lady Evelyn interjected, her voice firm. "Let us not speculate, Beatrice. Monsieur Poirot is here to uncover facts, not fuel rumors." She turned to Poirot, her expression apologetic. "I trust you will find the answers we seek. The drawing room is at your disposal, and my guests will cooperate fully." Poirot bowed, his eyes gleaming with quiet determination. "Merci. Madame, I shall continue my examination. The cabinet, it speaks, even in its silence, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall listen." He excused himself, returning to the drawing room, where the china cabinet stood like a sentinel, its secrets locked. Within its unyielding frame, as he resumed his inspection, Poirot's mind churned through the morning's observations. Charles's flippancy, Clara's fear, Hayes's guarded expertise, Langley's gossip, each was a thread in a tapestry of deceit. The cabinet's lock, pristine and unmarred, suggested a theft of extraordinary cunning, or perhaps no theft at all. Was the vase truly gone, or was its absence a ruse, a distraction from a deeper motive? Poirot's fingers traced the edge of the cabinet, his grey cells alight with possibilities. The truth, he knew, lay not in the lock but in the human hearts that surrounded it, each beating with its own hidden purpose. Chapter 4. The shadow of Sir Reginald. The afternoon light filtered through the leaded windows of Blackthorn Manor's study, casting a soft, dappled glow across the heavy mahogany desk where Hercule Poirot sat. The room was a sanctuary of Sir Reginald Blackthorn's legacy, its walls lined with leather-bound volumes and shelves cluttered with artifacts from his travels, bronze statuettes from Egypt, lacquered boxes from China, a tarnished ashtray that hinted at voyages to distant shores. Above the desk, a portrait of Sir Reginald dominated the space, his stern eyes fixed on some unseen horizon, his jaw set with the unyielding determination of a man who had conquered both commerce and curiosity. Poirot's keen gaze lingered on the portrait, sensing that the late baronet's shadow loomed large over the mystery of the missing Ming vase. The air was thick with the scent of old books and wax polish, and the silence was broken only by the faint ticking of a gilt clock on the mantel. Lady Evelyn had agreed to meet Poirot here, away from the prying eyes of her guests, to discuss her late husband's collection and the circumstances surrounding the vase's disappearance. As Poirot waited, he opened his small leather notebook, its pages already filled with meticulous observations from the drawing room and the china cabinet. The lock, unmarred. The key, ever in Lady Evelyn's possession. The guests, each with their own peculiarities, Charles's charm masking desperation, Clara's fear hinting at secrets, Dr. Hayes's expertise tinged with reticence, Mrs. Langley's gossip veiling a sharper intent. The puzzle was intricate, but Poirot's grey cells thrived on such complexity, piecing together fragments of truth from the chaos of human nature. The door creaked open, and Lady Evelyn entered, her dark dress whispering against the floor. Her face, though composed, bore the weight of sleepless nights, and her hands clasped a small, locked diary, its leather cover worn from years of handling. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but soft, "I hope this room offers the privacy you require. It was my husband's sanctuary, and I trust it will aid your inquiries." "Mercy," Madame Poirot replied, rising to bow with his customary precision. A man's study, it reveals much of his character, and Sir Reginald, I suspect, was a man of many layers. He gestured to the chair opposite the desk, and Lady Evelyn sat, her posture rigid, the diary resting in her lap like a talisman. She nodded, her eyes drifting to the portrait. Reginald was formidable, brilliant in business, relentless in his pursuit of knowledge, but secretive even with me. His collection was his passion, and the Ming vase was among his most prized possessions. He often spoke of its history, a gift from a Chinese diplomat to a blackthorn ancestor, passed down through generations. But he also hinted at something more, something hidden within the manor itself. Poirot's moustache twitched, his interest piqued. "Hidden, madame? A treasure, perhaps? Or a secret tied to the vase itself?" Lady Evelyn's fingers tightened around the diary. He was vague, Monsieur Poirot, as was his way. He spoke of a legacy, something greater than the artifacts themselves. He would say, "The manor holds my heart's work," but never explained further. I thought it mere whimsy, but now, with the vase gone, her voice faltered, and she looked away, her gaze settling on the window, where rain began to patter. Against the glass, Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle but probing. "This diary, madame, it belonged to Sir Reginald. May I ask what it contains?" She hesitated, then unlocks the diary with a small key from her chain, the same chain that held the cabinet's key. It is his journal from the last years of his life. I have read it, but it is filled with cryptic note sketches, references to artifacts, allusions to a guardian within the manor. I cannot make sense of it, but perhaps your keen mind will. She slid the diary across the desk, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Poirot opened the diary with care, his gloved fingers turning the brittle pages. The entries were written in a precise, angular hand, interspersed with drawings of artifacts and architectural plans of the manor. One page caught his eye, a sketch of the china cabinet, annotated with the words, "The Dragon's Eye Watchers." Beside it was a reference to the Ming vase, its dragon motif described in meticulous detail. Poirot's grey cells stirred. Could the vase itself be a clue to Sir Reginald's hidden legacy? He closed the diary, resolving to study it further, and turned his attention back to Lady Evelyn. "Madame, tell me of your nephew Charles," he said, his tone conversational yet incisive. "He is, I understand, a man with financial difficulties." Lady Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. "Charles is charming but reckless. He inherited his father's love of cards and horses, but not his fortune. Reginald bailed him out more than once, but since my husband's death, I have been less indulgent. He was in London during the time the vase disappeared or so, he claims. I have no reason to doubt him, but... She trailed off, her eyes clouded with doubt. Poirot nodded, filing away her words. And Miss Worthing, she seems a young woman. Most nervous, Nan. Clara is a dear girl, but fragile, Lady Evelyn said. Her family's fortunes have dwindled, and she is under pressure to marry well. She has been a guest here often, and Reginald was fond of her, though I suspect she found his collection overwhelming. She avoids the drawing room when she can, and... Dr. Hayes, Poirot pressed, his eyes narrowing slightly. His knowledge of antiquities, it is most extensive, oui. Lady Evelyn's expression tightened. Lionel was Reginald's confidant in matters of the collection. He catalogued many of the pieces and shared my husband's passion for their history, but he is reserved, almost secretive. I trust him, but I cannot claim to know his heart. Poirot's gaze shifted to the portrait, its eyes seeming to follow their conversation. And Mrs. Langley, she is, how shall I say, a woman who sees much and speaks more. Lady Evelyn's smile was faint but wry. Beatrice is a fixture in society, always chasing the next scandal. She means no harm, but her tongue is sharp, and her curiosity sharper. I invited her to keep the gathering lively, but perhaps that was a mistake. Poirot closed his notebook, his mind alight with possibilities. Sir Reginald's diary, with its cryptic references, suggested a deeper purpose to the collection and, perhaps, to the theft. The guests, each with their own motives, were pieces in a game the late baronet had set in motion. Madame, he said, rising, I shall continue my inquiries. The shadow of Sir Reginald, it is long, but I, Hercule Poirot, shall bring light to it. Lady Evelyn stood, her expression grateful yet strained. I trust you, Monsieur Poirot. This house, it holds too many secrets. I fear what else may be uncovered. As she left, Poirot returned to the diary, his fingers tracing the sketch of the china cabinet. The dragon's eye watches, he murmured, his grey cells churning. The vase was gone, but its absence was merely the surface of a deeper mystery. Sir Reginald, he sensed, had left a trail that led not to the vase, but to the heart of Blackthorn Manor itself. With the diary tucked under his arm, Poirot stepped into the corridor, the weight of the baronet's legacy pressing upon him like the shadows that clung to the manor's ancient walls. Chapter 5. A midnight disturbance. The night lay heavy over Blackthorn Manor, its silence broken only by the occasional creak of ancient timbers settling into their centuries-old repose. Hercule Poirot, ever alert despite the late hour, lay in his guest room, his small frame enveloped by the crisp linens of a four-poster bed. Sleep eluded him. His mind a whirl of details gleaned from the day's inquiries, the unblemished lock of the china cabinet, Sir Reginald's cryptic diary, the guarded glances of Lady Evelyn's guests, the manor with its labyrinth of corridors and shadowed corners seemed to pulse with secrets, each waiting for Poirot's grey cells to coax it into the light. He had retired early, declining Mrs. Langley's invitation to a late card game, preferring the solitude of his thoughts to the clamour of her chatter. Yet, as the gilt clock on his bedside table chimed midnight, a piercing scream shattered the stillness, jolting him upright. Poirot moved with surprising swiftness for a man of his fastidious demeanour, slipping into his silk dressing gown and polished slippers. He seized his silver-headed cane not for support, but as a precaution in a house where trust was a scarce commodity. The scream had come from the direction of the drawing room, its echo lingering in the manor's cavernous halls. As he stepped into the corridor, the air cool and heavy with the scent of old wood, he noted the flicker of lamplight beneath other doors. The scream had roused the household, but Poirot, with his unerring instinct, was determined to reach the source first. The drawing room was bathed in moonlight, its tall windows casting a silver sheen across the polished floor. The china cabinet stood sentinel against the wall, its glass panels reflecting the ghostly light. The empty space where the Ming vase had once rested, a silent accusation. At the room's center stood Clara Worthing, her pale face illuminated. By a single candle she clutched in trembling hands. Her nightgown, a delicate white muslin, shivered with her every breath, and her eyes, wide with terror, fixed on the cabinet as if it held some unseen menace. "Mademoiselle Worthing," Poirot said, his voice calm but commanding, "what has occurred? You are unharmed. He approached her cautiously, his cane tapping softly on the floor, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of disturbance. Clara's gaze darted to him, her breath catching. I saw someone," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "A figure near the cabinet. It moved so quickly, like a shadow. I came down for a glass of water, and then I screamed." Her candle flickered, casting jagged shadows across her face, and Poirot noted the genuine fear in her eyes. Though he wondered if it stemmed from what she had seen or what she feared he might discover. He stepped closer to the cabinet, his keen eyes examining its surface. The lock remained untouched, its brass gleaming as pristine as before. But on a small mahogany table nearby, a jade figurine, delicate dragon coiled around a pearl leaf, toppled on its side, its position unnatural among the otherwise orderly artifacts. Poirot's moustache twitched, his mind seizing on the detail. "This figurine, mademoiselle," he said, pointing with his cane. "It was upright when I examined the room this morning. You saw it fall." Clara shook her head, her hands tightening around the candle. "No, it was already like that when I came in, I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I didn't touch it. I only saw the figure, and then I screamed." Her voice broke, and she looked away, her shoulders hunching as if to ward off an unseen threat. Footsteps echoed in the corridor, and Lady Evelyn appeared, her hair loosely braided, a shawl draped over her nightdress. Her face was pale but composed, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of alarm. "Monsieur Poirot, Clara, what has happened?" she demanded, her gaze sweeping the room. Behind her, Charles Blackthorne lounged in the doorway, his dressing gown hastily tied, a cigarette already lit between his fingers. Dr. Lionel Hayes followed, his spectacles slightly askew, and Mrs. Beatrice Langley brought up the rear, her presence as inescapable as ever, even in dishabille. "A disturbance," Madame Poirot replied, his tone measured. "Mademoiselle Worthing claims to have seen a figure near the cabinet, and this figurine," he gestured to the fallen dragon, "is no longer in its place." "Most curious, Nan." Charles exhaled a plume of smoke, his smile wry. "Clara, you've got nerves like a cat in a storm. Probably just a shadow from the curtains. This old place creaks and groans all night." His tone was dismissive, but Poirot noted the way his eyes lingered on the cabinet. A flicker of unease beneath his casual demeanor. Dr. Hayes adjusted his spectacles, stepping closer to examine the figurine. "It's a fine piece," he said, his voice clinical. "Song Dynasty, I believe. Odd that it should fall. Its base is broad, designed for stability." His fingers hovered over the figurine, but Poirot's cane tapped his wrist. "If you please, Monsieur Hayes," Poirot said, his voice sharp. "Let us not disturb the scene." Mrs. Langley clutched her shawl, her eyes bright with excitement. "A figure, you say? Oh, Clara, how thrilling! Was it tall, dark? Did it carry a candlestick like some Gothic villain?" Her laughter was shrill, but Poirot's expression remained impassive. His mind focused on the figurine's deliberate placement. Lady Evelyn frowned, her hands clasped tightly. "The cabinet is locked, Monsieur Poirot. I checked it myself, before retiring. The key is here." She touched the chain at her neck, where the key hung, its presence a constant reassurance. Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing as he inhaled a faint but unmistakable scent lavender, sharp and distinct, lingering in the air like a signature. "Madame Langley," he said, turning to her with a polite but pointed smile, "your perfume, it is most distinctive. Were you, perhaps, in this room earlier this evening?" Mrs. Langley's fan snapped shut, her cheeks flushing. "Me? Why, Monsieur Poirot? I was in my room all night, dreaming of nothing more sinister than a good breakfast." Her indignation was theatrical, but Poirot noted the quick glance she exchanged with Charles, a silent communication that did not escape his notice. He knelt beside the table, his gloved fingers hovering over the figurine. The floor bore no marks, no scuffs or footprints, and the room's windows remained bolted, the curtains undisturbed. Yet the scent of lavender and the toppled figurine suggested a presence, someone who had been here, someone who knew the rooms. Secrets. "The figure Mademoiselle Worthing saw," Poirot said, rising to his feet. "It was no phantom. It was a person, careful but not careful enough. This figurine, it was moved deliberately, a message or a mistake." Clara's eyes widened, her candle trembling. A message. But who would do such a thing? Her voice was frail, and Poirot's gaze softened, though his mind remained sharp. "That mademoiselle is what I shall discover," he said, his tone resolute, the manner it speaks in whispers, "and I, Hercule Poirot, am listening." He ushered the group back toward their rooms, promising to resume his inquiries at dawn. As the others dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes returning to the figurine. The scent of lavender, the fallen dragon, Clara's fear, they were pieces of a puzzle, each pointing to a truth hidden in the shadows of Blackthorn Manor. The night had revealed a clue, and Poirot's grey cells were already weaving it into the tapestry of the mystery. Chapter 6. The archaeologist's secret. The morning after the midnight disturbance dawned grey and sullen, the clouds over Blackthorn Manor heavy with the promise of rain. Hercule Poirot stood in the morning room, his small, immaculate figure framed against a window that overlooked the manor's tangled gardens. The events of the previous night, Clara's scream, the toppled jade figurine, the faint scent of lavender had sharpened his focus, each detail a thread in the intricate web of the missing Ming vase. His grey cells, ever restless, churned through the possibilities, but his attention now turned to Dr. Lionel Hayes, the reserved archaeologist whose expertise in antiquities made him a figure of particular interest. The man's guarded demeanour, coupled with his intimate knowledge of Sir Reginald's collection, suggested a secret waiting to be uncovered. Poirot sipped his caf au lait, the delicate porcelain cup warm in his gloved hands, and resolved to probe the archaeologists. Reticence. The morning room was quiet. Its occupants dispersed after a subdued breakfast marked by strained silences and furtive glances. Lady Evelyn had retired to her study, citing correspondence, while Charles Blackthorn had vanished to the billiard room, his laughter echoing faintly through the manor's corridors. Clara Worthing remained in her room, claiming a headache, and Mrs. Beatrice Langley was ensconced in the library, no doubt penning exaggerated accounts of the night's drama. Dr. Hayes, however, had agreed to meet Poirot in the morning room, a neutral space where the detective could observe him without the distraction of the other guests. The archaeologist entered promptly, his lean frame clad in a grey tweed suit, his spectacles glinting in the dim light. His movements were precise, almost mechanical, as he took a seat opposite Poirot, his hands resting lightly on the arms of the chair. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice measured, "I understand you wish to discuss the vase's disappearance. I assure you, I am as puzzled as Lady Evelyn." His tone was polite, but Poirot detected a subtle defensiveness, a wall erected to shield something unspoken. "Indeed, Monsieur Hayes," Poirot replied, his eyes bright with quiet scrutiny. "Your knowledge of Sir Reginald's collection, it is most extensive, none. You catalogued his artifacts, you knew their value, their history. The Ming vase, in particular, tell me, what made it so remarkable?" He leaned forward slightly, his mustache twitching as he watched Hayes's reaction. Hayes adjusted his spectacles, a gesture Poirot had come to recognize as a stall for time. "The vase was exquisite," he said, his voice steady but careful. "A 15th century piece, blue and white, with a dragon motif. Its craftsmanship was unparalleled, and its provenance gifted to a blackthorn ancestor by a Chinese diplomat to its allure. Sir Reginald prized it highly, though he was cagey about its full significance." His words were precise, but Poirot noted a slight tremor in his hands, a crack in his otherwise composed facade. "Cagey, you say?" Poirot pressed, his tone gentle but incisive. "Sir Reginald, he spoke of secrets, perhaps a treasure hidden within the manor, tied to the vase." He watched Hayes closely, his grey cells attuned to every flicker of expression. Hayes hesitated, his fingers tightening briefly on the chair. He was a man of riddles, Monsieur Poirot. He often hinted at a greater purpose to his collection, but he shared little with me. My role was to catalogue, not to speculate. His eyes met Poirot's, steady but guarded, and Poirot sensed a truth withheld, a secret buried beneath layers of academic detachment. "Most interesting," Poirot said, his voice soft. "And last night, the disturbance in the drawing room, the jade figurine, toppled so curiously. You remarked on its stability, did you not? A Song Dynasty piece, you said, unlikely to fall by accident. Yet you were not in the drawing room, I presume." Hayes's jaw tightened, a fleeting shadow crossing his face. "I was in my room, Monsieur Poirot, reviewing notes. The manor's noises are many, but I heard nothing until Clara's scream." His words were clipped, and Poirot's moustache quivered with interest. The archaeologist's composure was a mask, and Poirot was determined to lift it. With Lady Evelyn's permission, Poirot had secured access to the guests' rooms for a discreet search, a task he approached with his usual meticulous. He excused himself from the morning room, leaving Hayes to his coffee, and made his way to the archaeologist's quarters on the second floor. The room was Spartan, its furnishings simple: a narrow bed, a writing desk, a wardrobe of dark oak. Yet it was the desk that drew Poirot's attention, its surface cluttered with papers, a magnifying glass, and a small leather notebook. He opened the notebook with care, his gloved fingers turning the pages to reveal sketches of Blackthorn Manor's floor plan, with the drawing room circled in red ink. Beside it were notes on the china cabinet, its lock described in technical detail, and a cryptic phrase: "The dragon's guard is the key." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. The phrase echoed Sir Reginald's diary, with its reference to the dragon's eye watchers. Was Hayes searching for the same secret his late patron had hidden? The sketches suggested a deeper interest in the manor's architecture, perhaps a hunt for a concealed compartment. Poirot tucked the notebook into his pocket, intending to confront Hayes with it later, and continued his search. Beneath a pile of papers, he found a letter, its wax seal broken, addressed to Hayes from an antiques dealer in London. The contents were vague, mentioning a potential acquisition and discretion in all matters, but the signature J. caught Poirot's attention. A dealer, perhaps, with ties to the black market. Returning to the morning room, Poirot found Hayes still seated, his coffee untouched. The archaeologist's eyes flickered with unease as Poirot resumed his seat, the notebook now resting conspicuously. On the table between them, Monsieur Hayes, Poirot said, his voice calm but unyielding. This notebook, it is yours, oui. The sketches, the notes, they suggest a fascination with the china cabinet, perhaps with what it conceals. Tell me, what is the Dragon's Guard? Hayes's face paled, his hands trembling slightly before he clasped them tightly. You've been in my room, he said, his voice low. I assure you, Monsieur Poirot, those notes are academic. I was studying the manor's history, its artifacts. Sir Reginald's collection is a scholar's dream, and I may have been overzealous in my research. Overzealous, monsieur. Poirot's tone was sharp, his eyes piercing, or perhaps purposeful. The vase, it is gone, and you, with your knowledge, your sketches. You are in a position most advantageous to know how or why. He tapped the notebook, his gaze never leaving Hayes's face. Hayes swallowed, his composure fraying. I admit. I was curious, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sir Reginald spoke of a hidden compartment, a secret within the manor. I thought the cabinet might hold a clue, but I never touched it. I swear it, Monsieur Poirot. His eyes pleaded for belief, but Poirot's expression remained impassive. Curiosity, Monsieur Hayes, is a dangerous thing, Poirot said, rising from his chair. It leads to truths, yes, but also to peril. I shall keep this notebook, for now, and I shall watch, for the Dragon's Guard, it seems, is watching also. He bowed slightly, leaving Hayes to his thoughts, and stepped into the corridor, the notebook a weighty clue in his pocket. The manor's halls were quiet, but Poirot's mind was alive with questions. Hayes's secret, though partially revealed, was but a piece of the puzzle. The archaeologist's knowledge, his sketches, his connection to a London dealer, they pointed to a motive, but not yet to a crime. The jade figurine, the lavender scent, Clara's fear, they were threads in a tapestry yet to be fully woven. As Poirot descended the staircase, the shadow of Sir Reginald seemed to linger, his cryptic legacy a challenge to the detective's unerring intellect. Chapter 7. The Hidden Compartment. The afternoon light waned over Blackthorn Manor, casting long shadows across its ancient halls, as Hercule Poirot stood once more in the drawing-room. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and the faint tang of dust, disturbed by his meticulous movements. The china cabinet loomed before him, its glass panels reflecting the flicker of a single candelabrum, its empty shelf a silent testament to the missing Ming vase. The events of the past days, Clara's midnight scream, the toppled jade figurine. Dr. Hayes's cryptic notebook had sharpened Poirot's focus, each clue a piece in the intricate mosaic of the mystery. His grey cells, ever restless, urged him to look beyond the obvious, to seek the unseen. Sir Reginald's diary, with its enigmatic reference to the dragon's eye, and Hayes's sketches of the cabinet, suggested a secret hidden, not in the lock, but in the very structure of the room. Poirot's moustache twitched with anticipation as he resolved to uncover it. He began his examination with the precision of a watchmaker, his gloved hands tracing the cabinet's oak frame, its edges worn smooth by time. The lock, as before, bore no marks of tampering, and the glass panels remained unblemished. Yet Poirot's instinct, honed by years of unraveling human deceit, told him the answer lay not in what was visible, but in what was concealed. He stepped back, his sharp eyes scanning the room's perimeter, the faded tapestries, the heavy curtains, the marble fireplace with its clutter of artifacts. The floor, a polished expanse of oak, seemed unyielding, but Poirot's methodical nature would not be deterred. He tapped his silver-headed cane against the floorboards, listening for a hollow note, a betrayal of something hidden beneath. The sound came faintly, near the base of the cabinet, subtle change in resonance, almost imperceptible. Poirot knelt, his movements graceful despite his fastidious attire, and pressed his fingers against the floor. A panel, cleverly disguised by the grain of the wood, yielded slightly under his touch. His heart quickened, though his expression remained impassive. With careful pressure, he eased the panel open, revealing a small, recessed compartment carved into the floor. Inside lay a locked box, no larger than a cigar case, its surface engraved with intricate Chinese characters. The box was heavy, crafted of dark wood, and its lock was as ornate as the cabinets, suggesting a craftsmanship both deliberate and secretive. Poirot rose, the box in his hands, and placed it on a nearby table. The room seemed to hold its breath, the shadows deepening as clouds passed over the sun. He turned at the sound of footsteps and saw Lady Evelyn enter. Her face pale but composed, her dark dress blending with the room's somber tones. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice tinged with surprise. "What have you found?" "A discovery," Madame Poirot replied, his tone calm but resonant with purpose. "This box, hidden beneath the cabinet, is, I believe, a piece of your late husband's legacy. The characters upon it, they are Chinese. Perhaps a clue to the vase's fate, or to something greater." Lady Evelyn approached, her eyes widening as she studied the box. "Reginald, he never spoke of this," she murmured, her fingers hovering over the engravings. "He was so secretive, always hinting at treasures within the manor. Could this be what he meant?" Her voice trembled, and Poirot noted the genuine shock in her expression, though he wondered if it masked a deeper knowledge. "The box, it is locked," Poirot said, his eyes meeting hers. "You have the key to the cabinet, madame, is there? Perhaps another key, one for this." He gestured to the box, his gaze probing but courteous. Lady Evelyn shook her head, her hand touching the chain at her neck. "No, Monsieur Poirot, this key opens only the cabinet. Reginald kept his secrets close, even from me. If there is a key, it is hidden elsewhere, lost." Her words were steady, but Poirot detected a flicker of unease, a fear of what the box might reveal. He nodded, his mind already racing through possibilities. The box, with its Chinese characters, echoed the dragon motif of the missing vase and the cryptic phrases in Sir Reginald's diary and Hayes's notebook. Was it a repository for the vase's true value, or a clue to a greater treasure? Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of the other guests. Drawn by the sound of voices, Charles Blackthorne sauntered in, his cigarette trailing a wisp of smoke, his eyes narrowing at the sight of the box. Clara Worthing followed, her steps hesitant, her face pale as she clutched her shawl. Dr. Hayes entered next, his spectacles glinting with curiosity, and Mrs. Beatrice Langley brought up the rear, her lavender perfume announcing her presence. Before she spoke, "Good heavens, Monsieur Poirot," Mrs. Langley exclaimed, her fan fluttering. "A secret compartment. It's like something out of a Gothic romance. What's in the box? Jewels. A map to buried treasure." Her excitement was palpable, but Poirot's smile was measured, his attention fixed on the others' reactions. Charles's smile was tight, his eyes flicking between the box and Lady Evelyn. "Clever old Uncle Reginald," he said, his tone light but strained. "Always one for theatrics. Bet it's empty just to keep us guessing." His casualness felt forced, and Poirot noted the way his fingers twitched, as if itching to seize the box. Clara's gaze was fixed on the floor, her hands twisting her shawl into knots. "It's unsettling," she whispered, almost to herself. "This house, it's full of secrets. I wish I'd never come." Her fear was palpable, and Poirot's grey cells stirred, wondering what knowledge she carried that made the box so threatening. Dr. Hayes stepped closer, his expression scholarly but intense. "The engravings," he said, adjusting his spectacles. "They're in an older dialect, likely Ming period. They might translate to Guardian of the Dragon's Heart. Most intriguing." His voice was calm, but Poirot detected a spark of recognition, a hint that Hayes knew more than he admitted. "Indeed, Monsieur Hayes," Poirot said, his tone sharp but polite. "Your expertise, it is most valuable. Perhaps you have seen such a box in Sir Reginald's collection before." He watched Hayes closely, noting the slight tightening of his jaw. "No, never," Hayes replied, too quickly. "But Sir Reginald was fond of such conceit-hidden compartments, coded messages. This fits his character." His words were plausible, but Poirot's instincts told him the archaeologist was holding back. Lady Evelyn's voice cut through the tension. "Monsieur Poirot, what do you propose?" "The box is locked, and without a key." She trailed off, her eyes searching his for reassurance. Poirot's mustache quivered as he formulated his plan. "We shall summon a locksmith, madame, to open the box with care. Its contents, I believe, will shed light on the vase's fate and perhaps on the intentions of those among us." His gaze swept the group, lingering on each face. Charles's forced nonchalance, Clara's trembling fear, Hayes's guarded curiosity, Langley's eager excitement. Each, he knew, held a piece of the truth, whether they realized it or not. As the guests dispersed, Poirot remained in the drawing room, the box a silent challenge on the table. The hidden compartment was a breakthrough, but it raised new questions. Who had known of its existence? Had the vase's theft been a ruse to draw attention from this greater secret? And why had the jade figurine been toppled, as if to signal the compartment's presence? Poirot's fingers brushed the box's engravings, his mind weaving the clues into a pattern. The shadow of Sir Reginald loomed ever larger, his legacy a labyrinth of deception that Poirot was determined to navigate. Chapter 8. A confession unraveled. The late afternoon at Blackthorn Manor was cloaked in a somber hush, the sky outside heavy with the threat of an impending storm. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, a cavernous room lined with towering bookshelves, and lit by the flickering glow of oil lamps. The air carried the scent of aged leather and ink, mingling with the faint dampness that seeped through the manor's ancient walls. The discovery of the hidden compartment, and the locked box beneath the china cabinet had set Poirot's grey cells ablaze, each clue sharpening his focus on the tangled motives of Lady Evelyn's guests. The box, with its enigmatic engravings, hinted at a secret tied to Sir Reginald's legacy. But it was the human element, the fears, the lies, the half-truths that Poirot knew would unlock the mystery of the missing Ming vase. His next step was clear: to probe the guests further, to press until their facades cracked under the weight of his relentless logic. He had requested a private audience with Clara Worthing, whose nervous demeanor and midnight sighting of a shadowy figure made her a figure of particular interest. The library, with its secluded corners and heavy drapes, offered the privacy needed for such a delicate interrogation. Clara entered, her pale face framed by a simple grey dress, her hands clutching a handkerchief as if it were a lifeline. Her eyes, wide and apprehensive, darted to the shelves before settling on Poirot, who stood by a high-backed chair, his posture impeccable, his moustache a perfect arc of scrutiny. "Mademoiselle Worthing," Poirot began, his voice soft but commanding. "You are troubled, Nan. The events of last night, the figure you saw, the fallen jade figurine, they weigh heavily upon you. I ask you to share what you know, for the truth, it is a balm to the anxious heart." He gestured to a chair, and Clara sat, her movements hesitant, her fingers twisting the handkerchief into knots. I don't know what to say, Monsieur Poirot," she murmured, her voice trembling. "I told you what I saw, shadow by the cabinet. It frightened me, and I screamed. I didn't touch anything, I swear." Her eyes pleaded for belief, but Poirot's gaze was unyielding, searching for the flicker of deceit beneath her fear. He leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mademoiselle, let us speak plainly. You came to the drawing room for a glass of water, you said, yet the kitchen is nearer your room. The drawing room, it is a curious destination for such a purpose, Nan. And the figurine, toppled so precisely perhaps. You know more than you admit." His tone was gentle, but his words were a scalpel. Cutting through her defenses, Clara's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, I can't bear it," she cried, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean any harm, truly. I went to the drawing room because I thought I might find the vase. My family were in such debt, and I heard it was valuable. I thought if I could sell it, just quietly, no one would know." Her confession spilled forth like a dam bursting, her words tumbling over one another. "But the cabinet was locked, and I couldn't open it. Then I saw the figurine fall, and I was so frightened, I screamed and ran." Poirot's moustache twitched, his mind cataloguing her words. "The figurine, mademoiselle, it fell as you watched. Or did you, perhaps, touch it in your search?" His eyes bore into hers, seeking the truth beneath her panic. "No, I didn't touch it," Clara insisted, her hands trembling. "It was already on its side when I looked at the table. I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I didn't take the vase. I couldn't. However, I didn't know how." Her sincerity was palpable, but Poirot's grey cells questioned the completeness of her story. Her motive debt was clear, but her account of the figurine's fall rang hollow, a detail misaligned with the scene he had observed. "Very well, mademoiselle," he said, his tone soothing but firm. "Your candour, it is appreciated. But the truth, it is a mosaic, and your piece is but one. Rest now, and speak of this to no one." He dismissed her gently, watching as she fled the room, her handkerchief pressed to her face. Clara's confession, though heartfelt, was incomplete. a fragment of a larger puzzle. Poirot's thoughts turned to another guest whose secrets demanded scrutiny, Charles Blackthorne, whose debts and charm made him a suspect of equal intrigue. He found Charles in the billiard room, the clack of ivory balls punctuating the air as the young man leaned over the table, his cigarette dangling from his lips. The room was dimly lit, its green baize table a stark contrast to the dark paneling, and the scent of tobacco mingled with the faint mustiness of the manor. Charles glanced up as Poirot entered, his smile easy but guarded. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, straightening, "come to join me for a game? Or are you here to play detective?" His tone was light, but Poirot noted the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes flicked to the door. "A game, Monsieur Blackthorne, but not of billiards," Poirot replied, his voice smooth. "The game of truth, it is more my style. Tell me, you were in London when the vase disappeared. Yet I have heard whispers, Mrs. Langley. She is most informative that you were seen with a certain antiques dealer, a man of questionable repute. Is this so?" Charles's smile faltered, his cigarette pausing midway to his lips. "Beatrice and her gossip," he muttered, exhaling a plume of smoke. "All right, Monsieur Poirot, I'll level with you. I've had dealings with a dealer Harrow. His name is I sold a few trinkets from the manor. Small things Aunt Evelyn wouldn't miss. A snuff box, a jade pin, nothing like the vase. I needed the cash, you see. Debts pile up, and London's not cheap." He shrugged, his nonchalance practiced but brittle. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind seizing on the name J. Harrow, the same dealer mentioned in Hayes's letter. "These trinkets, monsieur, they came from the drawing room. From the cabinet, perhaps." His tone was sharp, and Charles flinched, his cue stick tapping nervously against the table. "No, nothing from the cabinet," Charles said quickly. "Just odds and ends from other rooms. I swear I didn't touch the vase. I wasn't even here when it went missing." His voice rose, a note of desperation creeping in, and Poirot's grey cells hummed. Charles's confession, like Clara's, held a kernel of truth but was shadowed by omission. "Very well, monsieur," Poirot said, his tone measured. "Your honesty, it is a start. But the truth, it is like a billiard ball, it rolls until it finds its pocket. I shall find that pocket, rest assured." He left Charles to his game, the young man's eyes following him with a mix of relief and unease in the corridor. Poirot paused, his notebook open as he jotted down the days, revelations, Clara's desperate search, Charles's illicit dealings. Both pointed to motives rooted in financial need, yet neither accounted for the locked cabinet or the hidden box. The connection to Jaharo, however, was a thread worth pursuing, linking Charles and Hayes in a web of potential collusion. The jade figurine, the lavender scent, the cryptic engravings on the box, they were signposts to a deeper truth, one that Poirot sensed lay closer to Sir Reginald's legacy than to a simple theft. As thunder rumbled outside, heralding the storm's approach, Poirot's resolve hardened. The confessions he had unraveled were but the surface. The heart of the mystery awaited, hidden in the manor's shadowed depths. Chapter 9. The Scent of Lavender, the storm that had threatened Blackthorne. Manor all day broke with a vengeance as evening descended, rain lashing the windows and thunder rumbling like a warning from the heavens. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room, the flickering light of a candelabrum casting his small, meticulous silhouette against the faded tapestries. The china cabinet loomed before him, its locked doors a silent challenge, the empty shelf where the Ming vase had once stood. Mute accusation. The discovery of the hidden box, Clara's tearful confession, and Charles's admission of selling minor artifacts had woven a complex tapestry of motives. Yet the truth remained elusive. The faint scent of lavender, detected during the midnight disturbance, lingered in Poirot's mind, clue as delicate as it was incriminating, pointing to Mrs. Beatrice Langley, whose effusive chatter masked a keen observer's eye. His grey cells, ever vigilant, urged him to gather the guests and unravel the threads of deceit that bound them. Poirot had requested the household assemble in the drawing-room after dinner, a summons that Lady Evelyn delivered with her usual composure, though her eyes betrayed a growing unease. The room was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked wood and the faint mustiness of old fabrics, the storm's roar a fitting backdrop to the tension within. As the guests filed in, Poirot stood by the cabinet, his posture impeccable, his silk cane resting lightly in his gloved hand. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned each face, cataloguing their expressions with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a gem. Lady Evelyn took her place near the fireplace, her dark dress blending with the shadows, the key to the cabinet gleaming on its chain at her neck. Charles Blackthorne lounged against a chair, his cigarette smoke curling upward, his smile a thin veneer over his unease. Clara Worthing sat on the edge of a settee, her hands twisting her handkerchief, her pale face a mask of apprehension. Dr. Lionel Hayes stood by the window, his spectacles reflecting the candlelight, his scholarly demeanour tinged with a wariness Poirot had come to recognize. Mrs. Beatrice Langley swept in last, her plum-coloured gown rustling, her lavender perfume preceding her like a herald. "Monsieur Poirot," she exclaimed, her fan fluttering, "this feels positively theatrical. Have you solved our little mystery, or are we in for another twist?" Her laughter was bright, but Poirot noted the flicker of calculation in her eyes. "Madame E.T., Messieurs," Poirot began, his voice calm but resonant, commanding the room's attention. "The disappearance of the Ming vase, it is a puzzle most intricate, but the pieces, they begin to align. The locked cabinet, the hidden box, the fallen jade figurine, these are not accidents, but signs left by a hand most cunning. And then, there is the scent of lavender, detected in this very room last night, when Mademoiselle Worthing saw her shadowy figure." His eyes settled on Mrs. Langley, whose fan paused mid-flutter, her smile faltering. "Me," Mrs. Langley gasped, her hand pressing to her chest in a gesture of mock indignation. "Monsieur Poirot, surely you don't think I was creeping about in the dead of night? Why, I was tucked in my bed, dreaming of nothing more scandalous than a new hat." Her protest was vehement, but Poirot's gaze remained steady, his mustache twitching with quiet amusement. "Madame Langley," he said, his tone gentle but pointed, "your perfume, it is distinctive, none. It lingers like a signature. And last night, in this room, it was present a clue that cannot be ignored. I ask you plainly, were you here, near the cabinet, when Mademoiselle Worthing screamed?" The room fell silent, the only sound the patter of rain against the windows. Mrs. Langley's eyes darted to the others, seeking an ally, but found only curiosity and suspicion. She laughed nervously, her fan snapping shut. "Very well, Monsieur Poirot, you've caught me out," she said, her voice lighter than her expression. "I confess, I was in the drawing-room last night. I couldn't sleep, you see, and I thought a peek at Sir Reginald's treasures might amuse me. I didn't touch the cabinet, I wouldn't dream of it. I was merely admiring the collection." Her words were laced with bravado, But Poirot detected a tremor, a crack in her polished facade. Admiring, Madame Poirot pressed, stepping closer, his cane tapping softly on the floor. Or perhaps searching. The jade figurine, it was toppled, a sign of disturbance. And you, with your curiosity for gossip, your knowledge of society's secrets, did you seek something more than amusement? Mrs. Langley's cheeks flushed, her eyes narrowing. You overstep, Monsieur Poirot, she said, her tone sharp. I'm no thief. I was curious. Yes, Reginald's collection is the talk of the county, and I thought there might be a story in it, something to share at the next ball. But I didn't take the vase, and I certainly didn't knock over any figurines. Her indignation was convincing, but Poirot's grey cells questioned its depth, noting the way her gaze flickered to Charles, a silent plea for support. Poirot turned to Dr. Hayes, whose scholarly composure had begun to fray under the weight of scrutiny. Monsieur Hayes, he said, his voice cutting through the tension, you, too, have a secret Nan. Your notebook, with its sketches of the cabinet, its reference to the Dragon's Guard. It suggests a knowledge most particular. You knew of the hidden compartment, perhaps a secret Sir Reginald shared with you. Hayes's hands trembled, his spectacles slipping slightly as he adjusted them. I knew Reginald was fond of hidden mechanisms, he admitted, his voice low. He designed the cabinet's lock himself, and he hinted at other secrets. In the manner, I made notes, yes, out of academic interest. But I didn't know about the box, not until you found it. His eyes met Poirot's, pleading for belief, but Poirot's expression remained impassive, his mind sifting through the archaeologist's words. Charles exhaled a plume of smoke, his smile wry. Seems everyone's got a secret, a Poirot. Clara's snooping for cash, I'm selling trinkets, Beatrice is sniffing for gossip, and Hayes is scribbling treasure maps. What's next? And Evelyn hiding the vase herself. His jest drew a sharp glance from Lady Evelyn, but Poirot noted the way Clara flinched, her handkerchief now a tattered knot. Enough, Charles, Lady Evelyn said, her voice firm but strained. Monsieur Poirot, what do you make of this? The box, the confessions, where do they lead us? Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind weaving the clues into a pattern. Madame, the scent of lavender, it is a thread, but not the whole cloth. Madame, Langley was here, yes, but her presence does not explain the locked cabinet, the missing vase, or the hidden box. Monsieur Hayes, his knowledge is deep, but his motives, they remain unclear. The truth, it is close, but it requires one final step, the opening of the box. He turned to Lady Evelyn, his tone resolute. A locksmith, Madame, must be summoned. At once. The box, it holds the key to Sir Reginald's secret, and perhaps to the heart of this mystery. As the guests murmured, their faces a gallery of unease, Poirot's grey cells churned. The lavender scent, though a clue, was but a distraction. The true crime lay deeper in the motives and secrets of those gathered. The storm outside raged on, its fury mirroring the tension within. As Poirot prepared to unlock the next piece of Blackthorn Manor's enigma. Chapter 10. The vase's secret. The storm had subsided by mid-morning, leaving Blackthorn Manor cloaked in a damp, grey hush, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, his small, immaculate figure a beacon of order amidst the manor's ancient chaos. The china cabinet, its glass panels catching the one light, remained the focal point of the mystery, its empty shelf a silent challenge to his grey cells. The locked box from the hidden compartment, with its intricate Chinese engravings, rested on a mahogany table, its presence a tantalizing promise of answers. The confessions of Clara Worthing and Charles Blackthorne, the lavender-scented clue pointing to Mrs. Beatrice Langley, and Dr. Lionel Hayes's cryptic sketches had woven a web of motives. But Poirot sensed the truth lay within the box a secret, tied to Sir Reginald Blackthorne's legacy and the missing Ming vase. His mustache twitched with anticipation as he awaited the locksmith, summoned at his insistence to unlock the box's secrets. The drawing room was quiet, its tapestries and artifacts bathed in the muted glow of a single chandelier lit to counter. The gloom of the overcast day, Lady Evelyn entered, her dark dress blending with the shadows, her face pale but resolute. She clutched the key to the china cabinet, its silver chain a constant reminder of her stewardship over her husband's collection. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but tinged with apprehension, "the locksmith will arrive within the hour. I trust this box will shed light on the vase's fate." "Indeed," Madame Poirot replied, his tone calm but resonant with purpose. "The box, it is a piece of Sir Reginald's puzzle, and its contents, they will illuminate the path to the truth. But first, I must ask, did your husband ever speak of a riddle, a phrase tied to his treasures? Something, perhaps, about a dragon?" Lady Evelyn's brow furrowed, her fingers tightening round the chain. "A dragon. He was fond of such motifs. His collection is full of them. But a riddle. I recall him saying once, 'Where the dragon guards, the treasure lies.' I thought it poetic nonsense, but now..." Her voice trailed off, her eyes drifting to the box, its engravings gleaming faintly in the light. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind seizing on the phrase. "Most interesting, madame. The dragon, it is a symbol of protection, of power. The vase, with its dragon motif, it was perhaps more than a decoration, it was a guardian, Nan." He turned to the cabinet, his gloved fingers brushing its frame. As he considered the riddle, the other guests began to gather, drawn by the promise of revelation, their faces a gallery of curiosity and unease. Charles Blackthorne sauntered in, his cigarette absent for once, his hands thrust into his pockets. "So Poirot, we're finally cracking open the box," he said, his tone light but strained. "Hope it's worth the fuss. Uncle Reginald loved his little games." His eyes flicked to the box, a flicker of greed beneath his casual demeanor. Clara Worthing followed, her steps hesitant, her shawl drawn tightly round her shoulders. She avoided the cabinet, her gaze fixed on the floor, as if the box's presence intensified her fear. Dr. Lionel Hayes entered next, his spectacles glinting, as he studied the box with scholarly intensity. "The engravings," he murmured, almost to himself, "they suggest a purpose beyond mere decoration. A clue, perhaps, to Sir Reginald's intentions." His voice was calm, but Poirot noted the tension in his posture, a man bracing for discovery. Mrs. Beatrice Langley swept in last, her lavender perfume as bold as her crimson dress. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, how thrilling!" she exclaimed, her fan fluttering. "A locked box, a hidden treasure. It's positively delicious. Do tell us what you expect to find." Her excitement was infectious, but Poirot's smile was measured, his mind attuned to the undercurrents of her words. The locksmith, a wiry man named Mr. Grayson, arrived promptly, his tools clinking in a leather satchel. He examined the box with a professional eye, his fingers probing the lock's intricate mechanism. "A fine piece," he said, his voice gruff. "Old, but well crafted. It'll take a moment, but I can open it without damage." Poirot nodded, his gaze never leaving the box as Grayson set to work, the soft scrape of metal filling the room. The guests watched in silence, their breaths held as the lock clicked, and the box's lid eased open. Inside lay a single parchment, yellowed with age, its edges curling. Poirot lifted it with care, his gloved fingers unfolding it to reveal a handwritten riddle in Sir Reginald's angular script, where the dragon guards, the treasure lies. Seek the heart within the hoard. Below the text was a sketch of the Ming vase, its dragon motif rendered in meticulous detail, alongside a note. The bowl, not the vase, holds the key. Poirot's mustache quivered, his grey cells alight with revelation. The bowl, Madame et Messieurs, he said, turning to the cabinet. The Ming vase, it was a decoy, a guardian to draw the eye. The true treasure, it lies elsewhere. He approached the cabinet, unlocking it with the key Lady Evelyn provided, and scanned the shelves. Among the artifacts was a jade bowl, its surface etched with a subtle dragon pattern, overlooked amidst the cabinet's more ostentatious pieces. He lifted it carefully, his fingers probing its base until he felt a faint click. A false bottom sprang open, revealing a compartment within. Nestled inside was a flawless ruby, its facets catching the light like a captured flame. A collective gasp filled the room. Lady Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Reginald's ruby, she whispered. He spoke of it once, a gem from his travels in the East. I thought it a myth. Charles's eyes gleamed, his casual mask slipping too. Reveal raw avarice. Clara shrank back, her fear intensifying, while Hayes's scholarly detachment gave way to a flicker of awe. Mrs. Langley clapped her hands, her laughter shrill. A ruby, oh Monsieur Poirot, you've outdone yourself. A treasure hidden in plain sight. Her excitement rang hollow, and Poirot's gaze lingered on her, noting the calculation beneath her glee. The vase's secret, Poirot said, his voice commanding silence, was to guard this ruby. Its theft, I suspect, was a ruse, a distraction, to conceal the true prize. But who among you knew of this? Who sought to claim it? His eyes swept the group, each face a study in guilt or innocence. Hayes cleared his throat, his voice hesitant. Sir Reginald. He mentioned the ruby once, in passing, as part of his collection's heart. I thought it lost, or sold. I had no idea it was here. His words were plausible, but Poirot's grey cells questioned their completeness, recalling the archaeologist's sketches and his connection to the dealer J. Harrow. Charles shrugged, his smile forced. News to me, Poirot. If I'd known about a ruby, I'd have been less subtle about my debts. His jest fell flat, and Poirot noted the sweat beading on his brow. Clara's voice was a whisper. I didn't know. I only wanted the vase for my family. Her confession, already given, rang true, but Poirot sensed she was a pawn, not a player. In this deeper game, Mrs. Langley's fan fluttered, her eyes bright. How clever of Sir Reginald. A ruby hidden in a bowl. Why, it's the stuff of legends. Her enthusiasm was too perfect, and Poirot's suspicions deepened. The lavender sent a lingering clue to her nocturnal wanderings. Lady Evelyn stepped forward, her voice firm. Monsieur Poirot, what now? The ruby is found, but the vase remains missing. Is this the end of the mystery? Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind weaving the final threads. Not yet, madame. The ruby, it is the treasure, but the vase's absence, it is the key to the thief's intent. Someone sought to distract us, to search for this gem undisturbed. The truth, it is near. As the guests dispersed, their faces shadowed with unease. Poirot held the ruby, its weight a testament to Sir Reginald's cunning. The vase's secret had been revealed, but the thief's identity remained, waiting for Poirot's unerring logic to bring it to light. Chapter 11. The culprit, revealed. The drawing room of Blackthorn Manor was suffused with a tense stillness. The morning light filtering through the tall windows in pale, watery shafts that did little to dispel the shadows clinging to the ancient tapestries. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's center, his small, meticulous figure a beacon of order amidst the gathering storm of revelation. The china cabinet, its glass panels gleaming with cold clarity, stood as a silent witness to the drama about to unfold. The discovery of the ruby hidden within the jade bowl had shifted the mystery's focus, revealing the Ming vase's disappearance as a calculated distraction. The locked box, the fallen jade figurine, the scent of lavender, and the confessions of Clara and Charles had woven a tapestry of motives. But Poirot's grey cells had pieced together the final threads. It was time to unveil the truth. He had summoned the household to the drawing room, his request delivered with a quiet authority that brooked no refusal. Lady Evelyn stood by the fireplace, her dark dress blending with the shadows, her face a mask of apprehension as she clutched the chain bearing the cabinet's key. Charles Blackthorn leaned against a chair, his usual nonchalance strained, his fingers fidgeting without his customary cigarette. Clara Worthing sat on a settee, her shawl drawn tightly around her, her eyes wide with fear of what was to come. Dr. Lionel Hayes stood near the cabinet, his spectacles reflecting the light, his scholarly demeanor fraying under the weight of scrutiny. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her lavender perfume as bold as her crimson gown, fluttered her fan with forced gaiety, her eyes darting between Poirot and the others. Madame et Messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding, cutting through the room's tension like a blade. The mystery of the Ming vase. It is a puzzle most intricate, but the truth, it is now clear. The vase, it was not the prize but the shield, guarding a greater treasure, the ruby hidden within the jade bowl. Its disappearance was no theft of greed, but a ruse, a distraction to allow the true prize to be sought. And I, Hercule Poirot, have uncovered the hand behind this deception. A murmur rippled through the group, their faces a gallery of unease. Lady Evelyn's hand tightened on her chain, Charles's jaw clenched, Clara's breath caught. Hayes adjusted his spectacles, and Mrs. Langley's fan paused mid-flutter. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his moustache quivering as he continued. "Let us retrace the steps," he said, pacing slowly before the cabinet. The vase, it was removed from a locked cabinet, its key held solely by Madame Blackthorn. No marks of tampering, no broken glass. How then was it taken? The answer, it is simple. It was not taken recently. Sir Reginald himself removed the vase months ago, before his death, and hid it elsewhere in the manor to protect the ruby. The empty shelf, it was a fiction, a stage set to conceal his true intent. Lady Evelyn gasped, her eyes widening. "Reginald? But why would he not tell me?" Her voice trembled, but Poirot's raised hand commanded silence. "Sir Reginald. He was a man of secrets," Poirot continued. "His diary, his riddles, his hidden box, they spoke of a treasure, the ruby, which he guarded with cunning. The vase, with its dragon motif, was a decoy, a guardian to mislead. But someone among us learned of this secret and sought to claim the ruby, using the vase's supposed theft as a cover." He turned to Clara, whose face paled further. "Mademoiselle Worthing, your confession, it was heartfelt. Your debts drove you to consider the vase, but you found the cabinet locked, the figurine already toppled. You were a pawn, Nan. Your fear. It was genuine, but it was not you who orchestrated this game. Clara's shoulders sagged, relief mingling with her terror. Poirot's gaze shifted to Charles. Monsieur Blackthorne, your debts, they are heavy, and your dealings with J. Harrow, they are suspicious. You sold trinkets, yes, but the ruby, it was beyond your reach. Your role was to distract, to jest, to draw the eye from the true culprit. Charles's smile was gone, his eyes narrowing, but he said nothing, his silence a tacit admission. Mrs. Langley's fan snapped shut, her voice sharp. Monsieur Poirot, this is absurd. You can't think I had anything to do with this. My lavender scent, my presence in the drawing room, I was merely curious, nothing more. Her indignation was fierce, but Poirot's smile was thin, his eyes piercing. Madame Langley, your curiosity, it is a mask, he said. Your gossip, it gathers secrets like a net. You were in the drawing room, yes, seeking a story, but also seeking the ruby, perhaps. Yet I believe your role was witness, not the mastermind. Her flush deepened, but she held her tongue, her eyes flickering with unease. Poirot turned at last to Dr. Hayes, whose scholarly composure had crumbled, his hands trembling as he clutched his spectacles. Monsieur Hayes, Poirot said, his voice a quiet thunder, it is you who stand at the heart of this deception. Your notebook, with its sketches of the cabinet, its reference to the Dragon's Guard, you knew of Sir Reginald's secret. You helped him design the hidden compartment, did you not? And when he died, you saw your chance. You spread rumors of the vase's theft, knowing it was already hidden, to search the manor undisturbed. The jade figurine, toppled so clumsily it was your mistake, a sign of your nocturnal search. Hayes's face drained of color, his voice a hoarse whisper. Monsieur Poirot, you misunderstand. I only wanted to preserve Reginald's legacy. He trusted me with his secrets, yes, but I didn't steal the vase. His protest was desperate, but Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. You did not steal the vase, Monsieur, because it was never stolen, Poirot said. But you sought the ruby, using the fiction of the theft to cover your movements. Your letter from J. Harrow, it speaks of an acquisition plan to sell the ruby, perhaps. You knew the vase was a decoy, and you searched for the true prize, disturbing the figurine in your haste. Hayes collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. I admit it, he said, his voice breaking. Reginald told me of the ruby, of the compartment. After his death, I thought, if I could find it, it would secure my work, my research. I didn't mean harm. I spread the rumor of the vase's theft to give me time to search. But I didn't. Find the ruby you did. His confession hung in the air, heavy with defeat. Poirot nodded, his expression grave but satisfied. The truth, it is revealed. The ruby is found, the vase's fate is clear, and the culprit, he is unmasked. Order, it is restored. He turned to Lady Evelyn, whose face was a mixture of shock and relief. Madame, the vase, I believe, is hidden in a safe within the manor, saw Reginald's final precaution. You will find it, I am certain. The room was silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling over the group. The ruby, gleaming on the table, was a testament to his triumph. A jewel wrested from the shadows by the light of his intellect. As the guests dispersed, their faces marked by shame or awe, Poirot's grey cells remained vigilant, ready for the final act of this intricate drama. Chapter 12. Order restored. The morning sun broke through the lingering clouds over Blackthorn Manor, casting a tentative golden light across the drawing room where Hercule Poirot stood. His small, immaculate figure, a symbol of clarity amidst the manor's shadowed legacy. The china cabinet, its glass panels gleaming softly, now held a restored Ming vase, retrieved from a hidden safe in Sir Reginald Blackthorn's study, exactly as Poirot had deduced. The ruby, its fiery heart uncovered from the jade bowl, rested in Lady Evelyn's possession, soon to be secured in a London bank. The storm of the previous days had passed, both outside and within, and the air was crisp with the promise of resolution. Yet Poirot's grey cells, ever meticulous, lingered on the final threads of the mystery, ensuring no detail remained unaddressed. The guests had gathered one last time in the drawing room, their faces a study in relief, shame, and quiet awe. Lady Evelyn stood by the cabinet, her dark dress softened by the morning light, her expression one of gratitude tempered by the weight of recent revelations. Charles Blackthorn sat in a corner, his usual bravado subdued, his hands still without a cigarette as he grappled with the exposure of his minor thefts. Clara Worthing, her shawl loosely draped, seemed lighter, her fear eased by the truth, though her eyes avoided Dr. Lionel Hayes, who stood alone, his scholarly demeanour shattered by his confession. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her lavender perfume subdued by a simpler gown, fluttered her fan with less vigour, her gossip silenced by the gravity of Poirot's triumph. Madame et Messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and resonant, commanding the room with its quiet authority. The mystery of the Ming vase, it is resolved. The vase, it was never stolen, but hidden by Sir Reginald himself, a guardian of the true treasure, the ruby within the jade bowl. The theft, it was a fiction, crafted by Monsieur Hayes to allow his search for this gem. The fallen figurine, the scent of lavender, the confessions of Mademoiselle Worthing and Monsieur Blackthorn, they were but shadows, cast by the light of Sir Reginald's cunning. He turned to Lady Evelyn, his moustache twitching with satisfaction. Madame, your husband, he was a man of secrets, but also of genius. The vase, the box, the riddle, they were his legacy, a test of wit and will. You have preserved his collection, and now, with the ruby secured, his heart's work is safe. Lady Evelyn's eyes glistened, her voice soft but steady. Monsieur Poirot, I cannot thank you enough. This house, it was heavy with secrets, but you have brought light. The vase, the ruby, they are restored, and I shall ensure their safety. She touched the chain at her neck. The key to the cabinet now, a symbol of trust renewed. Poirot's gaze shifted to Dr. Hayes, whose head was bowed, his spectacles glinting faintly. Monsieur Hayes, he said, his tone firm but not unkind. Your greed, it led you astray, but your confession, it has spared you greater consequence. The authorities, they will be informed, but I believe Madame Blackthorn may show leniency, Nan. Lady Evelyn nodded slightly, her expression stern but not vengeful. Hayes's voice was barely audible. I am sorry, Lady Evelyn. My obsession, it blinded me. I only wanted to honour Reginald's work. His words carried the weight of defeat, and Poirot noted the sincerity, though it did little to erase the archaeologist's folly. To Clara, Poirot offered a gentle smile. Mademoiselle, your heart, it was burdened by debt, but your honesty, it has set you free. Seek help, not theft, and your path will be brighter. Clara's lips trembled, a tear escaping as she nodded, her relief palpable. Charles, sensing Poirot's attention, raised his hands in mock surrender. "All right, Poirot, you've got me. No more trinkets, I promise. I'll sort out my debts the hard way." His grin was weak, but Poirot detected a flicker of resolve. "A chance for redemption, Mrs. Langley." Her fan still spoke with uncharacteristic restraint. "Monsieur Poirot, you've made this weekend unforgettable, though not quite the scandal I hoped for." Her laughter was soft, and Poirot's smile was indulgent, recognizing her role as observer rather than instigator. As the guests dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the manor's halls, Poirot lingered by the cabinet, his eyes tracing the Ming vase's dragon motif. Lady Evelyn approached, her voice low. "Monsieur Poirot, will you stay another day? The manor feels lighter with you here." "Mercy, madame, but my work, it is done," Poirot replied, bowing slightly. "The train to London, it awaits, and I, Hercule Poirot, must return to my tisane and my reflections." He smiled, his grey cells already turning to the next challenge, though the manor's secrets would linger in his mind. As he boarded the Rolls-Royce to the station, the manor's towers fading into the mist, Poirot sipped his flask of tisane, its warmth a comfort against the autumn chill. The ruby, the vase, the hidden box, they were pieces of a puzzle now solved, a testament to his unerring logic. "The china cabinet," he murmured, his eyes gleaming. "It is a mirror to the soul, fragile, yet full of hidden truths." With a final glance at Blackthorn Manor, he settled back, the rhythm of the car lulling him into contemplation, the mystery of the vase a triumph to savor. The end.